Hey, good morning. Friday morning coffee thoughts. A little bit fancy today with a dulce de leche coffee on oat milk from Juan Valdez. Uh, Very good. Try it. Let us know where you're connecting from, like always. And let's talk some cybersecurity here on Friday morning coffee thoughts. So the last few weeks we've talked a lot about zero trust. We went over some objective benefits, uh, some of the components of the architecture, and that is all great and good. But you should also be prepared to face some challenges, and even blockers, because it's a long journey, and with any long journeys, there are always certain curves and turns that you may or may not anticipate. So, what we're going to try to do today is help you prepare for some of these, help you anticipate some of these different uh, blockers or potential blockers or challenges. Remember, with anything in risk management, anything strategic that you work on, there's always challenges and opportunities. So, knowing how to navigate this is going to help. The other thing is a lot of the benefits and business, a lot of the benefits we discussed in our last episode are also things that you need to plan very well for because they can be challenging to deal with. For example, the first one, we last week talked about zero trust eventually becoming a cost saving strategy for you if you integrate a lot of the technologies, if you can actually start slashing some items of your budget. But that said, the research and budget allocation can also be a constraint. All right. So this is a challenge number one, your resources and budgeting. Your challenge is that this architecture has many different parts, and it can be costly depending on the size of the organization, and even regardless of it. You must plan and budget your infrastructure upgrades, acquisition, training, personnel, and new processes. In organizations with a small limit and limited resources or budget constraints, must allocate the necessary funds and staff to support the implementation. Now, we're going to talk about the challenges, and we're going to give you some tips to overcome the challenge. So how do you address this? Well, develop a detailed multi-year roadmap outlining your zero trust implementation steps, milestones, and goals. Then break down the roadmap by year and plan your budget accordingly, right? Very simple strategic approach. Once you have the roadmap and budget, you can then go to the executives and gain their support by communicating the benefits, implementation, risk, and cost of adopting zero trust network architectures. This is crucial to ensure you have the resources and support to implement the new security architecture successfully. So the number two challenge is complexity and scalability. Yes, we know in the long run it's going to reduce your footprint and bring things together by integrating a lot of platforms, so making it easier for you to manage. But the reality, as we mentioned, and the challenge is that the architecture, the strategy has many components, right? And because it has many parts, it won't be easy to manage and implement the strategy. Furthermore, complexity scales with the size of the organization. The more systems, applications, people, and the larger the infrastructure is, the more difficult it will be to identify the critical assets, define your controls, and manage enforcement policies across the environment. Furthermore, you have another here special item, which is legacy systems. And they often need more security controls and visibility for a comprehensive zero trust implementation. The challenge is that they lack native capabilities to deliver such security requirements, right? That's why they're legacy. How do I address this? Here are some tips for you. One is, of course, assess your current infrastructure. This is something you're going to do as you're developing your roadmap and budget, right? So assess your current infrastructure, systems, applications, and then identify vulnerabilities, legacy systems, and potential areas of improvement. This assessment will help prioritize actions and determine the scope of the Zero Trust implementation. This is also part, like I said, of your budget and road mapping exercise. And here's one thing we talk about almost in every podcast or episode. Don't try to implement Zero Trust across your infrastructure organization simultaneously. Instead, like we've told you, follow our advice in building incremental programs by implementing Zero Trust in a small, manageable chunks. When working with clients, we usually have to work hard to convince them to identify a few use cases that we can test during a proof of value or POV in a smaller, isolated environment, such as development or test environment or IT or someone that it won't be heavily impacted. This will allow you to test a new security architecture against your use cases and identify any problems before we implement in your production environment. For example, we're assisting a customer where he was ready to go for it, and we really talked to him about doing a POV. And what we found was that he was lacking a very foundational item or architectural piece for the Zero Trust environment. That was an identity provider, like a true solid identity provider. And so we actually pivoted and shifted to identify and deliver an identity provider before we actually went on with the Zero Trust, the full Zero Trust implementation. There's value in doing the proof of value. And then, of course, the last tip is maybe another thing is that you should prioritize the modernization of legacy system, because when systems cannot be upgraded or replaced, you need to develop a strategy to isolate them, which is really part of the Zero Trust security anyway, segmentation, micro-segmentation, but knowing how you're going to address legacy systems is very important. The third challenge for you is your organizational and cross-functional culture. This is huge, big one. Implementing a Zero Trust model often requires a significant shift in organizational culture, and depending on the organization's size, adopting this new approach to security will impact several operational teams and stakeholders, especially in the technology department, but also across business units. So adopting a Zero Trust network architecture involves a mindset of change, from trusting internal networks to verifying and validating almost every access request. This is different than what you're used to do today. Resistance to change, lack of awareness, or unwillingness to adopt new security practices can hinder your project and your progress. How do we address this? Well, establish a set of architectural principles. We talked about that before, and that are clear and easy to understand by the team that is tasked with implementing and designing and implementing the different platforms and components of the Zero Trust architecture. Then develop a multi-phase organizational change management plan. You heard me talk about organizational change management a lot to address the what's in it for me, or the with him, what we call. You will encounter resistance from key stakeholders. So a great approach to do this is by walking people through the organizational change management process. There are a couple of different techniques to implement around OCM, or organizational change management. One of them is a change curve. The other one is ADKAR. That's your homework to look this up for anything that you do in leadership, of course. And then once you have that message and that plan, you're going to communicate with employees about the benefits of zero trust and how it will affect their work or the within. So what's in it for me? This will help reduce resistance to change and ensure that employees are willing to comply with the new security policy. This process will take time. Organizational change management takes time and empathy, and it will test your patient and your stakeholders as well. So be prepared for that. There's also the fourth challenge here is, and I haven't been putting them on, of course, sorry about that. But the fourth one is third-party dependencies. Very important. Your challenge is that digital transformation has brought it with it the adoption of cloud services and hosted solutions. Organizations that rely heavily on third-party vendors, managed service provider, or cloud services providers must account for these services when developing the zero trust network architecture and strategy. Coordinating security controls and ensuring consistent enforcement across multiple external entities can be complex and require cooperation from many stakeholders. How do you address this? Well, again, include your stakeholders that are responsible for managing third-party relationships, contracts, procurement, third-party risk management. They will be critical to your success, and communications with these stakeholders about your security requirements and expectations is very important. Establish an inventory of these services, including the product or service owners, the service risk rating, and the current architecture that they are running on. Then try to align your security controls and requirements with the provider's controls and vice versa. And then establish a third-party audit program to assess the effectiveness of the controls from time to time. Number 5, we have compliance. Your challenge here is an opportunity. We told you that it will help you solve compliance issues. But that said, there's also the challenge of improving your regulatory compliance, because depending on your industry, regulations and standards are or could add complexity to developing your requirements and implementing the strategy. Ensuring that security measures meet regulatory expectations without impeding the business operations is crucial, right? So how do we address this? Well, keep your compliance, internal audit team, and legal teams engaged in the process. A lot of collaboration, as you've seen across all these challenges. They are a great partner and resource to your security program anyway. Build a simple compliance matrix to map out zero trust capabilities and requirements to the regulatory and compliance requirements. And then keep monitoring your ever-changing laws, rules, and regulations landscape. That's why you work with these other teams. They are on top of that. Number 6, and the last one we have, again, this is another one where we told you it will help you with monitoring efforts. Well, cybersecurity monitoring, detection, and response can also be a challenge if you don't have the right tools and the right approach. So what you want to do now is find a way to find the platform integration that or integration that can help you build the platform such that you don't have disparate systems. It is very challenging. This is very challenging, and you will need a robust monitoring tool and process to detect anomalous behavior, risk access request, risk management, access requests, and manage incident response efficiently. The way you address this is by ensuring that the existing and new systems can be integrated into the Zero Trust platform. You also want to implement a monitoring tool, whether it's the Zero Trust platform itself or a detection and response platform or a SIEM that can ingest logs from various sources. When you are acquiring systems and you are in the process of modernizing them, You should be able to make sure that these systems can be integrated, but it also can ship logs to other destinations. Then it's all about process always, right? So you're going to have to build good access management process, good incident response processes, so your team can follow them and act effectively when something happens. And last but not least, test your controls and response often through breach and attack simulation and purple team exercises, so you can measure the effectiveness of your controls and your strategy. So again, Zero Trust is a valuable security architecture that can help your organization protect your data and systems from cybersecurity attacks, despite these potential blockers. But organizations considering implementing Zero Trust should carefully assess the costs and benefits of change and develop a comprehensive plan for implementation. And finally, remember, by accounting these challenges and following some of these tips, then we can help you overcome the blockers and successfully implement a Zero Trust network architecture and strategy for your organization. So again, as I said last time, let's embrace the power of Zero Trust and thrive in the digital age together. Let us know how we can help you. And remember, these resources are here for you. We are here for you, but you need to plan well. You need to anticipate any challenges so you can turn them into benefits and business objectives. Thank you for listening. Have a good weekend.